without further ado, I give you Richard Benishai.
Thank you, Brian. Okay. To tell you a bit about myself, I was an engineer, electronic engineer, until about 2005. Then I got lucky and I got laid off. And then I pursued geobiology, which I started in 2000 for the rest of the time, full time. I don't miss anything about engineering. In geobiology, I'm capable of helping others, and I do that either through myself or with the help of my students. As Brian said, the entire world, we're kind of getting on to every country and everything that's negative and so on. And we're making a change. It may not be obvious right now, but that's because the way run the way they're supposed to. And we're helping in making a change. I teach in about 7 different countries. The United States is one of them. And I have students from all over that work with me once they have taken some courses, and once I taught them how to do the work for the good of the planet. Okay. What I'm going to show you now is something I started way back when I was taking one of my first courses in France. I was learning then. That was about 2002. And the teacher there, he said to me, why don't you look at the high energy places in your country? He meant Israel. I said, okay. Because prior to that, I used to go to France and would go to Strasbourg, that's where my brother lives, and I used to learn around there, and I used to visit the cathedral. There's a big cathedral there in Strasbourg. I used to spend days and days there, taking notes and so on. And I said, why don't you study the places in your country? Okay. So I went back to Israel, and I did study, and I did start. I found some high-level places there and started to work on them. Then I was told to work on 18 places altogether in Israel, which I did. Took me a period of 3 years, and I wrote a book on it. And so for years and years, I studied churches, and I even teach a course on church geobiology in churches. I teach that course in different countries, except the States, because here you don't have anything that's old type. By old type, I mean a construction done before 1,300, 1,400. Because after that date, the Templars were all dead. They were killed by the church. And they took with them all the knowledge. And of course, some people maybe knew some things, but everything was done. The Templars were the ones that used to build most of the cathedrals and the big churches. They had a lot of money. And you know, they were like Western Union for those days. In other words, if you wanted to transfer money, let's say from France to somewhere in Spain, well, they would write you out a note, and then you would take that note and go to Spain, to the place where they told you to go, and you would get cash. Or you would send a note to somebody, and they would get the cash. Pretty much like Western Union today. And so they were in business of money, sending and buying things and so on, and they were also fighting the wars, the Crusader Wars. And they were becoming very powerful, so the church decided that it was best to do away with them. Well, that's a part. Then when I studied the synagogues, what I found out was there was a big resemblance between the layout, the energetic layout of a synagogue, to that I had studied in France for the churches. So it's the same. They use the same things. And last year I was in Turkey. I was teaching in Turkey, and before the classes, we had a couple of days, and we visited 2 mosques. This was the first time for me. First time I visited a mosque. And when I visit a place like a church or a mosque or whatever, then I don't look up at the nice, beautiful windows. I look down, with my pendulum, with my antennas, and that's what I look for. I look for things that are usually unseen. And those things are the ones that give the place its energy. This is why when you go in a cathedral, you feel, as you get closer to the hostel, the altar, then you start to feel more and more energy. And so I had a chance to visit these 2 mosques, and lo and behold, they behave the same way than churches and synagogues. I found the same things there. So this presentation is basically on the comparison of these 3 types of buildings, just for you to see that they really are quite common. Well, let's first clear up a few things before we talk about the buildings so that you can follow. Well, first thing we're going to talk about is what are these things and what do they do? Because if I describe these things to you in relationship to a home, well, they're all negative. Okay? What happens is when you go into a building like a synagogue or a church, cathedral or mosque, the building itself now is going to act pretty much like a dolmen. People know what a dolmen is? Basically, it's a table like this one, made of stone, one side, another side, and a big slab on top. Some of these are really huge. They weigh like 20 tons. Now, I don't know how they did the work then. And in a dolmen, they used to put these dolmens over currents of water. They used to feel the water by hands. They didn't have antennas. They used to feel the water by hand. And they would put the dolmens over the current as it was flowing into the village. In this way, there was a transmutation of energy from negative to positive. The water going under the village was positive energy. Okay? And that's what they did. They knew that. But in your homes today, unfortunately, when you have water running under your home, it generates negative energy. And you're going to see why. The same for faults, the same for chimneys, vortexes, let's say, same family, and the same for the Hartmann and Curry networks. So let's talk first about underground currents. In underground currents, when you have the current running on the edges of the current, on the banks of the underground river, you have some very high energy, well, higher than the rest. It's in millivolts, but it's higher, and it's generated there. And you can feel that when you go over with the antennas. To detect the current, you can feel the antennas open up then. And the currents are negative for us, mainly because of this. What you see there, the Greek letter is called gamma. Those are gamma rays coming from outside of our atmosphere. Of course, some of them come also from inside the Earth, because the Earth there is in fusion, very high, 4,500 degrees Celsius. And the ones from below we don't care about, because they're not going to bother us. But it's the ones from the top that come, as you can see. There are some coming from the top, from outside. They're created by the sun, by other planets and other places in the cosmos. They reach the Earth, and as we are sitting here, they are bombarding us. They come through our body and keep going. When they come through our body and keep going, we don't have any problem with it. Now, these little particles, gamma, they're just about the smallest thing that you can think of. They're the size of an atom. That's small. They have a tremendous mass in something like 100,000 kilo electron volts. It's like you're putting a tank into a grain of rice, and you just throw that thing, you know, it's going to hit. So it goes through everything. It goes through our flesh, goes through wood, stone, steel, even through lead, and stone, of course. So it reaches down underground. If it didn't go through you, goes down, or even if it went through you, it still reaches down the ground, and it keeps going. The only thing that's going to stop that alpha ray is water. Water underground is not pure. If it was pure water, it would keep going. But there are particles in this water, and the water is going to reflect that gamma ray and absorb at the same time part of its energy. Like 70% is absorbed by the water. The rest is reflected back up. Now you have a gamma ray which is quite weakened by now because it went through a great distance, hit the water, it's going back up to the same distance of ground and stone and so on. And by the time it reaches our body, as you can see in this drawing, by the time it's already weakened and it's going to be blocked by our body because we are 70% water. Well, when it's blocked by our body somewhere, by some cell, it's going to stay there. It's going to radiate. The radiation is ionizing, meaning that it's going to change now the cell structure. And when you have a lot of these cells which are being changed, then you develop what we call a growth. And I'm talking about cancer. Or it can be something less of a cancer, but just as bad. That's how things happen, because we were born to be healthy, not to be sick. So the Mother Earth that we so dearly love, at the same time makes us sick. Well, we're renting the place. It's her place. We're here temporarily. So underground water can cause very serious problems. And once we have blocked the underground water in a home, and I teach people how to do that, it's not difficult. Once we block that, then we got most of the problems licked. And, okay, so we see that in homes, underground water is very negative. By negative, we mean not good for our health. Positive is good for our health, right? That's the definition. When the water enters the church, right at the very line of the building, you're going to have a transmutation of energy. It's going to go from negative, there's going to be maybe half an inch where it's no man's land, You don't know if it's positive or negative. And then as you move in forward with the pendulum, it's going to be positive. So there is a transmutation of energy which is clearly defined and caused by the building, which is the church or whatever, synagogue or what have you. Now, that's how it works. And I thought that you should know that underground water acts differently under homes and under religious or places of cults. Next thing that is a problem are underground faults. Now, underground faults in homes can create havoc. If you sleep on an underground fault, and you have your arm on it, when you wake up in the morning, your arm's going to hurt bad. If it crosses your legs are going to hurt badly. Underground faults are kind of rare under people's homes. They're rare. That's why I don't consider them as a number 2, but as a number 3, because, yeah, they hurt a lot, but you don't find them under every house. Thank goodness. And faults are a displacement of the underground. Whether it's, you can have also sand on one side and earth on the other side. You can have rock on one side and sand on the other side. Where you have a difference like this in the terrain, that's called a fault. You can have also a splitting of the rock. That's a fault. And of course, here in the United States especially, and especially in some cities or villages, you had so much gas, radon gas coming up that people had to actually move to another, just abandon everything and just move to another place. You have, relatively speaking, a lot of radon gas here in this country. Some areas, not everywhere. And these faults allow also the gamma rays that come from the Earth to come up much easier than if there was just plain rock. Okay? Because now you got a fault which may start like way, way, way down. And the gamma rays are going to go up much easier than if you had solid rock. Okay, so faults we established, I think, that in homes they're not good. What happens in religious buildings? In religious buildings, when we are going to build one, we're going to look for a fault. I have never seen a religious building, a place of cult, if you like, which has not a fault at the entrance, in the middle of the door. I have not seen a building yet. So the same thing happens with faults as with water. The energy, it's transmuted from negative to positive. And the third thing on the list, cosmetic telluric chimneys. These are entities. They're created by Mother Earth, and they're created so as to, it's like a tool, like a vacuum cleaner in your house. They're supposed to take the negative energy, which is in the planet, inside the planet, and guess who puts this negative energy in there? Who? Yeah, you and you and you. Men. We create the negative energy on this planet. When the Creator made the earth, it took 7 days, that was quick. 6 days, and then he rested the 7. But when he made the earth, then he didn't make anything negative. Everything was positive. Man comes along, the legend, the story, Abel and Cain, that was the first blood that spread. And ever since then, we've been doing nothing but putting blood on the ground and negative energies, and you name it, we do it. Even the thinking that you may have, okay? You're thinking about your neighbor. You say, oh, that son of a, just saying that, it creates now, you dissipate this negative energy, it goes into the walls of your house, of course, and it also goes on the ground. And when enough people do that with a negative thinking, then it goes into the earth and saturates it. In order to clean itself, the earth created chimneys. I'm going to say, I'm almost positive that when the earth was created, there were no chimneys. It came out of necessity. After man did so many things to make it negative, the earth created chimneys, and the chimneys, as you can see there, part of the chimney is in the ground, part is above ground. It is invisible to the eye, but nonetheless, it's there, it exists. I teach people how to locate them in a house. and how to move them outside the house to a special place. Chimneys will take the negative energy from the ground to the bottom, the root, what you call the root, and send it up through the center corolla. It's like a funnel. Sends it up to the cosmos. I know where exactly it's going. I know that. But I won't go into that now. And then positive energy is taken from the cosmos by the big funnel and goes down through the chimney, through the heart of the chimney, into the ground, and the root dissipates this energy. So it's an exchange of negative to positive chimney continuously. So the energy one time goes up, that's the negative energy going up and out, and then the energy goes down, and that's positive energy coming into the earth. So now you all know a little bit about chimneys. Chimneys are used extensively in places of cult to bring high energy to the place. To give you an example that you can easily relate to, it's when you go inside churches, you usually have what they call the holy water. It's like made of stone sometimes. It's like, in French they call it bénitier. And you put your hand in it and put it on you. And actually in each and every one of the bénitier, of these, what they call in English, holy water? What? A font. Yeah. The font is also, right. It's also a name that I've seen in a baptistry. It's a place where they baptize you. I've seen that in Israel, in one church there, a big font. It's about diameter, it's stable, and people used to sit inside and get baptized. So these fonts, if they have, let's say, something like 2 feet in diameter, you're going to find a chimney that's there 2 feet in diameter. And the chimneys are also used in other places in the church or in the synagogue or in the mosque in order to give more energy to the place. So these things can be created by men. Like I said, in places of cult, people created them. They can be created by other chimneys. They have babies. They can be created by extraterrestrials. I know that for a fact. And they can be created by, well, that's about it. I guess that's about it. That covers everything. So they're tools used by the planet Earth to purify itself, or the tools used by man in order to give more energy to the place. All right. These things are used also, I forgot to say, in homes you will not find positive chimneys. You will find only negative chimneys. Usually they get around. They travel on either the Curry network or the Hartman network. They're used as a transport for the chimneys, and they're actually attracted by our energy. So if you have a home that's under construction and it's finished, you finished, but the people didn't move in yet, you will not find chimneys there. I have plenty of examples of this. Okay? And once people move in, then the chimneys are attracted and they come there. And they're attracted by our energy, and they feed off of us, of our energy. That's the way it is. They don't do it intentionally, it's just the way they are. And they settle mostly on the bed of people or in the living room when you're watching TV or places of work. And of course, they pump energy from us because they're negative and they take our energy. In churches, in synagogues, in mosques, and in other places, sometimes outside in the countryside, you will find positive chimneys only. Okay? We use them to our advantage in these places. And the last thing that most everybody knows is the Curry and Hartman networks. And those also used in places of cults in order to increase the energy. At home, they're negative. If you sleep on a Hartman line, it's going to influence your body, your cells in your body. It work on the cell level and influence you. The minute you enter a church, all that negative network outside becomes positive, the same. And the way that they use in churches is that, well, I say church because mostly I worked in churches, is that they use a system of demultiplication. Not multiplication, but demultiplication, where they take a single Hartman or Curry line and mentally they split it to 3, 5, sometimes 7 different lines. One line being negative, the rest being positive. You see? And so in this way, they can improve the energy in the place. You have a lot of energy, especially when they do it in the walls, where the outside of the wall is negative and the center and the inside of the wall are positives. They use that in columns. You see a lot of columns in these old churches. Well, the energy of going under the column, that also is split from one single line, and I've checked this many times. Depending on the number of columns you have a different number of splits. And this energy goes up the column and comes back down to the people here. They are like showered by positive energy. Okay. All right. This is way back. This is like, 15th century before the Common Era. So almost about 3,500, 4,000 years ago. You had the pharaohs, you had the dynasty, the Egyptian dynasties. This particular temple was done by a name like this, Amephobois or something like that. It's about minus 1,350, something around there. Took him a few years, like 40 years. This is called the Temple of Men. The reason it's called the Temple of Men is because it is done according to the human structure. There were studies done way back in the 50s by a young lady and her father on this temple, and they found out that this was done by parts, 9 parts, each one depicting a particular area on the body. What you notice here in particular is that the shape. It's not straight like this building. No, somewhere along the line there is a turn. I think it's quite evident here. See the turn? Does everybody see the turn? Anybody doesn't see the turn? It goes up like this on an angle and then straight up. See that? Okay. Why did they do that? Because already then they were using the fault that was there as the centerpiece, as the tool to increase the energy in the building. And the fault was not straight, so I said, okay, it's not straight. They build the place according to the fault. They didn't worry too much about aesthetics, and that's what they did. That's what you got there already back then. They used the fault in order to, and you can see also the blue lines. The blue lines are underground water streams. Of course, they're outside, they are negative. The minute they enter the temple, they're positive. Okay? And you can see that they placed a lot of the important locations in this temple, they placed it over crossings of underground streams, which is what is being done which was done when construction was done for churches and synagogues and so on. This is, like a timetable where it shows that the first temple, the first Jewish temple built in Jerusalem, was built like almost 1,000 before the Common Era. And then it was taken down, and then they built a second temple, and that was taken down, and people spend their time there destroying and building this waste. Okay, then if we're going through time, then you can see the first church was built in Greece about 250 after the Common Era. And then the first mosque was built in Cuba. It was a Cuba mosque, and it's in Medina. And that was built by Muhammad, and that was about 620 or so. In the timetable that we have here, we see that the first thing that was done was this Egyptian temple. That was the first creation. And then the first Jewish temple was built many thousand years after that. It was built first, and then you had the Christian houses, the church, and then the mosque, as far as time is concerned. So we can assume that I used to say the synagogue was a model for the others, but I would say more now today that the Egyptian temple was the model for the rest of the religious buildings. Let's start with the Jewish temples. I took this one because it's one that I visited, of course, and so on, and I worked on it. But in this picture, you see on the left side, in blue, you have what a reconstructed model of what that building used to look like. On the right side is what it looks like today. So it was a 2-floor structure. The second floor used by the women, that's usually the case in most places, is that the women are separated from the men. It's also true in the mosques, but there's some good reasons for that. And then one side of the building, the right part, was used like a hall, like a community center, where people used to go there and buy things, sell things, and just have a drink together maybe, or what have you, or play games. And the left side was the actual synagogue. You can see there are still some columns left there. And I'm going to move to the actual picture. There you go. I did the analysis of that synagogue, and what I found out was that the Hartman and Curry lines were exactly under the center of the columns. What happens, it's not like I believed at first. For a couple of years, I went on believing that they built the columns right on top of the crossings. How foolish. What happens is that people, geobiologists at the time, with their hands, they moved the lines to where they wanted to, and they blocked them in place. This is something I also do in the classes when we study. I teach that people how to move the lines just to see that we have the mental capability of doing such things. What you have in the center, right there in the center, is a fault. People look for that fault in order to build the synagogue on it. Now, this synagogue was the one that Jesus used to attend as he was a youngster, maybe 25, 30, and he would preach there. And what you can also see on this is that right where the fault is, you also have an underground current running the whole length of the building. And you also have an underground current running at the top of the building where the altar was. So now you have a water current. You see, this is the altar. I'm not preaching today, I'm off duty. This is the altar, and you have one underground current exactly the length of the table, the width of the table, going from one side to the other. And you also have another one going straight down to the entrance and out to the back. So you have a crossing. The energy of that crossing, of course, both currents are positive, right? So it's very high. And at that place, it's a spiral vortex. One side of the vortex is positive, the other side is negative. So of course, inside, where the water crossing is, you have the positive spiral of the vortex, and the negative side is way outside in the back, where it doesn't bother anybody. So what you have is when you walk into the building all the way to the back, you're going to see an increase in energy as you're moving to the back. Systematically, it's going to go up. So this is the synagogue, okay? Now watch what happens to the other buildings. Yeah, I took another church that I studied. I used to learn there. In France, I went there many times. I studied there. This is from the 15th century, about 1430. And it's in Alsace, in France, Rheinecker. It's near Strasbourg. Very interesting things about that building. I read about it. I got the measurements for it. And what happens is that the nave, you know what the nave is? It's the main center part of a cathedral or a church. It's the nave. The dimensions of the nave are like 1490, 14.9 by 9 meters. Now, I don't know how exact these things are, but if you divide one by the other, or if you take the golden ratio, which phi, you take phi, which is 1.456, 1.618, 1618. If you take that and you multiply it by the width, you're going to get the length. So that church was built according to the golden number. The first temple in Jerusalem was built by the golden number. The Cathedral of Strasbourg was built by the golden number. Many things were built by the golden number. And also, the angle of the roof, I don't know if I see it here, if I show it. Yeah, you have it here. You have the main roof. You have an angle there which is exactly 72 degrees. Now, 72 is a number, like a magic number. Okay? You have 72 angels. You have 72 degrees in a pentagram. And you know, pentagram is something very powerful, energetically wise. It takes negative energy, transmute it to positive energy. You will find the pentagram, it's got nothing to do with religion. It's a symbol. It dates back, way back. And you will find it in different places. Like in mosques, you'll see it on top of the minaret, top of the tower. You'll see the pentagram. Pentagram is a star with 5 points. So if you take 360 degrees for an entire circle, divide that by 5, you're going to get 72. And also the pentagram is a very wonderful figure because inside the pentagram, in the center, you have a pentagon, not only in Washington, D.C. You have a pentagon, then in that side of that pentagon, you can put another pentagram. And you can continue like this for infinity. You have in the body, how many chakras do you have in the body? Mainly 7. There's another 65, making it 72 chakras in the body. Most of the time we just consider the 7 principal ones. When Pharaoh died in Egypt, well, that's where he lived, there were 72 days of mourning for the Pharaoh. 72 days. There are 72 names of God in the Hebrew religion. So you can see that this number, 72, which was put in that roof, was done intentionally. It just didn't come up like this. In order to increase the energy in the place. Let's take a look at the floor plan of that church. There you go. Now look again. This is a church, not a synagogue. You have a fault running through the center, right in between the 2 doors. There are 2 doors in the front. Right in the center, there is a fault. Right in the center, there is an underground water stream. There are 2 altars, one at the very top and one lower. Can you see that? Yeah. And under these altars, you have also a cross stream under each one. That's probably why they put the altars there. Well, you don't always have actual water in churches. You know, that's not too easy to have everything there, all set up for you. To have a fault and to have underground water and another one running across the table. And it's not too easy to find that. So what people do in those days? They went to a riverbed, not too far, and they took out stones from the riverbed and they indicated the order in which they took them out. And then they laid them out under the groundwork of the church so that the stones would be the same positions that they were in the river. Now stones, there's the memory of water. Okay? They remember water. So when you go and use your antennas to look for the water in the church, they're going to open up because you have stones there with the memory of water. Sometimes you may have real water there, but it's very rare to find that, to find all the combinations. Again, you have at the main altar, you have a spiral from a vortex, positive spiral. You go outside in the back of the church, maybe 50, 60 meters, you'll find the other negative spiral because one has to be positive here and to balance negative spiral outside. And this is where this is the maximum energy location in the church. They put the hostie, how do you say, what they give the what? The host, yeah. In French it's called hostie, I don't know. And they give that, they're located inside the little tabernacle, and that is the highest energy location in the church. Okay. So what you see here is that we have a direct commonality between a synagogue and a church. And this I knew all along because I worked in both. And the surprise came last year when I went to this place and another place. This is the mosque in Turkey. Izmir, if you look at Turkey, like this is the left side and the right side over here where you have Constantinople or Istanbul and so on. Well, Izmir is on the very west end of Turkey. That's a big city. And we went, this place here, Ulu Cami Mosque, is in a small village called Birgi. We visited the place. It's a simple looking building. Okay, it's nothing fancy. And it was built in 1312. Now, if we take a look at the inside, okay, what's it look like? Looks like a church, looks like a synagogue. In this place you had exactly, you had two entrances, and you had two currents, you had two faults running across. And what is amazing, in every case where you're going to measure a current entering the place, the door, the entrance, is going to be exactly the same width as the current width. This was done intentionally. As you increase, as you go in from the bottom part of this drawing to the top part, the energy increases as you progress along. The same as you would if you were in a synagogue or in a church or in a cathedral. The same. The electromagnetic networks, Curry and Hartman, they are also located under the columns inside this mosque. You have a place there in every mosque which is called the mihrab. And the mihrab is, if you look at the top of the drawing, you may see there's a circle there, right? Circle. And that circle is located, that's the spiral, the positive spiral of the vortex. The negative one being in the back, way out back. I found it also. And that mihrab is a place which is oriented toward Mecca. And this is the highest energy point in the place. I wrote here, I'm not sure you can read it, but that place is at 3.4 million bovis, whereas the entrance, the first column at the entrance, was 800,000. So you see the tool that they use there, they use the vortex, and sometimes they use also chimneys inside mosques, but they use the vortex in order to increase the energy at that particular point. It's the same system that you find in churches and in synagogues. Same system. And when I saw this, I was simply, well, I was overjoyed, you know. I get my kicks out of that. And I was overjoyed, and I was also very much surprised. I was surprised. Because basically, we're all the same. And let's see if I have some conclusions here to show you. Yeah. The final word. They're all doing the same thing. Starting from Pharaoh, you know, way back in Egypt, until the last ancient building was built. Every building, whether church, synagogue, or mosque, by its form, is going to change the energy from the outside inside. Negative to positive. The thing to do when you go into a church, well, here I can't tell you to do that here because the United States was, well, not the United States, even the Pilgrim and so on. 1492 is when Columbus came. 15th century, etc., when they maybe built the first churches. Okay. And then you don't have this type of buildings in this country. That's why I don't teach this course here. What can I teach? You know, I can teach in Turkey. I'm going to teach in Turkey in June, second part of June. I'm going to go there and teach this course about churches and mosques. And I can teach it in France. I can teach it in Portugal. everywhere where there are some new churches, some old type churches. And that's it for that. I hope that you have any questions. You have to talk loud.
Why doesn't the house change the energy the way the church does?
Well, because the house,
Leave it on?
well, no, the house is built just any which way, with no considerations for energy. If you were to build a house using the same guidelines you have here, in other words, use your cubit or use the gold number, or use square root of 2, square root of 3 in your dimensions of the rooms. If you did that, if you considered underground water, if you did all these things, you may get something like that. But today we build, how do we build? We build with concrete and metal. That's not very energetic. As a matter of fact, concrete, it spits out pollutions for like 10, 12 years, bad gases, until it's cured. And so that's why you have places of cult or religious buildings with high energy, because they were particularly designed to do that in order to elevate your spirits. I like to teach the course with the churches. I like that. I'm Jewish, but I like to teach the course. It's got nothing to do with it. I don't teach religion. I teach geobiology. Cathedrals that you see in France, they all built before 1400. All the cathedrals. Reims, Poitiers, Nîmes, Strasbourg, Paris. You know the cathedral in Paris, Notre Dame? When you go inside, it goes straight, and then all of a sudden, it goes to the side. Why? You should know now why. Because the fault is crooked. So they build the building to match the fault. And that's about it I have to offer for today.